Okay. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. If you are here right now, then you already know this is a masterclass on relationships. So thank you for being extremely resourceful and joining in. I'm so happy you're here. We do have a lot to cover in 40 minutes, so grab something to drink, something to write on if you want, and then let's get started right away. And I'm going to start by saying that there are only two types of relationships that exist, and they are conscious relationships and unconscious relationships. It's always going to be one or the other. You can't have or be in both at the same time. But you can, and it is possible to have a mix of relationships. So some of your relationships are conscious and some of them are unconscious. Like say you have a conscious relationship with a certain friend or a certain coworker, and then you can have a really unconscious relationship with like your mother or a spouse. So let's talk about how to identify each of these. A conscious relationship is going to be an incredible container for growth and personal evolution. These relationships are extremely beneficial to our overall well-being and emotional functioning, which are very important things. They feel safe. They feel rewarding, fulfilling. There's respect, boundaries, autonomy, choice, support, freedom, all of those really important things that make a relationship conscious. So the two people involved are both self-regulated and self-respecting emotional adults. And on the other hand, an unconscious relationship is one where both parties are constantly setting usually unspoken expectations. Sunny's barking, sorry. And these expectations for the other person to meet without question. And then if they don't meet them, then they're demanding them to be fixed. So these expectations usually include certain behaviors they'd like to see, certain words they'd like to have said to them, certain actions the person needs to take in order for them to feel better, and then certain feelings that the other person should help make us feel. When these expectations are not met, there is then a desperate attempt to try and enforce them. And we do this by controlling, manipulating, gaslighting. If you're not familiar with how these terms show up in our behavior, I highly recommend you do a really quick search and just take a self-inventory to see how you might be exhibiting these behaviors. It's always so easy to point out this behavior in other people, and then blame it all on them. But usually if you're seeing it in someone else, it's because we are also doing it in ourselves. And that's a really hard thing to become aware of and acknowledge and deal with. So unconscious relationships are more parasitic than they are beneficial. And that's really because they drain our energy and they use up our finite amount of focus on very frivolous, unimportant things. These relationships are usually not very respectful. They don't feel safe or soothing to our nervous system. They feel more like a cheap roller coaster ride with some really high highs and some really low lows. But there's never growth happening. There's just spinning on a never-ending loop and then always ending right back up where you started. Usually both of the people involved are not self-regulated and they are stuck in emotional childhood. And so luckily for you, I am an expert on both of these relationship types. I have extensive experience participating in unconscious and conscious relationships. And now it's very easy for me to tell the difference between the two, not just for myself, but for all of my clients and anyone else that, is asking for input from me. A while back, I had made a decision for myself, and I said that from that point on, I would only be participating in conscious relationships for myself. And my life has never felt better. It's never been easier to be in my relationships. No drama, no stress. My relationships aren't a cause for concern or a problem in my life. They are just benefiting me every day. They make my life better. And that is how relationships should be. That is their utility. They're not there to make our lives harder. So today we're going to be covering the 3 obstacles to creating conscious relationships. Because once we get past these obstacles, then we finally have what we need to make this decision to say, I'm only going to be in conscious relationships. Then we finally can feel better in our lives. So I'm going to go over what they are, and then we'll go into much greater detail after. So obstacle number 1 is not knowing how to be self-sufficient and self-respecting. Obstacle number 2 is not knowing how to communicate. And obstacle number 3 is not knowing how to navigate conflict. So I want to be clear. When I say relationships, I am not just referring to romantic relationships. Like I said, any relationship can be unconscious or conscious. Any relationship can be parasitic or beneficial. It doesn't matter if it's your mom, dad, brother, cousin, coworker, boss, child, stranger. This concept applies to every relationship you have. Every single one. So whenever we find ourselves in unconscious relationships, what we are doing is just playing out our past conditioning on an automatic setting and then putting it on repeat. It's like a record that you just leave and you let play, play, play. You never change the record. You never stop the record. It's just going. You're not doing anything about it. This really seems like the easier option for our brain. And that's why so many people do it. That's why so many relationships are unconscious. It's our brain's wiring. So it's better to understand our brains in relationships too. So our brains are always looking to conserve energy and receive instant gratification. So it thinks drawing from our shitty subconscious patterns is the smartest way to navigate a relationship. That's how it's rationalizing all of this behavior. That's what's going on there. So even though these patterns are usually not healthy, not rewarding, they don't feel good, they are familiar. And we do know that they don't kill us. And those are the only 2 prerequisites required for our brain to choose this method. But in our brains wanting things to be easier and more efficient for us, it's actually making our relationships and our lives more difficult and more dysfunctional. So we have to be careful when we're navigating relationships and feeling justified in our kind of unconscious behavior. And that's because we're allowing the entire discourse of the relationship to be determined by what was modeled to us in our past, by what society told us relationships are and aren't, or by what we decided relationships were when we were children, and then we never questioned since. And this would all be good and dandy if what we had been modeled was super healthy, included boundaries, respect, and an understanding of emotional responsibility. But unfortunately, most of our parents' relationships and our society at large is the emotional equivalent of a toddler running around with a knife. Like, this is my wand, but imagine a baby running around with a machete, a sharp, dangerous tool, just madness. That's what it's been. They're cute. They mean absolutely no harm, but they're doing a lot of damage without ever being aware of it. So this is why a lot of unconscious, well-intended relationships can become so dangerous and abusive so easily. It's not the two individuals involved in the abuse that are sick and disturbed. It's actually our society at large that has told us that's what's normal. That's what's accepted. This is how you navigate conflict. So let's not judge ourselves or other people as we start to navigate this awareness. This information is so valuable and should never be used to beat yourself up or to make you feel self-righteous against someone else. It should only be used to inspire you to take ownership of your life, to grow, and to build more awareness for yourself. So let's clear all of this up today together and then start moving in the direction of creating conscious relationships that feel really good. So the first obstacle to creating conscious relationships is not knowing how to be completely self-sufficient and self-respecting. So we need to fully become both of these things before we go out to decide who we'll be in a relationship with for everything: friends, significant others, where we want to work, what we'll tolerate, what we won't. Relationships cannot become conscious until all the people involved are really respecting themselves, loving themselves, and knowing how to take care of themselves in a way where they aren't being desperate, needy, and creepy to the other person. We all know what that feels like when someone's being so desperate with us, or we've been that person. We've been in that position of needing something, of trying to control the other person in a way that feels creepy and needy, feels awful. So if they enter into the relationship anyway, without this respect and love there first, they enter into it with a big fat expectation right off the bat for the other person to do and be all of this stuff for them. And that isn't their job. We are not kids anymore. We're not dependents. And that means mentally, emotionally, physically, we are not dependents anymore. So we need to stop acting like dependents in our adult relationships if we want more rewarding relationships. So making this decision beforehand is obviously a huge problem, because when we're children, we don't have a say in who we're in relationships with. We don't get to choose our parents or our guardians. We don't get to choose where we're born in the world or our community or the people we go to school with. So this has to be a decision you make later on as an adult. Like the minute you can, I would make it. And we'll already be in several relationships at that point, but that doesn't mean it's ever too late to decide this. You can be 60 years old, 70 years old, and make this decision for yourself. And the sad truth is most people never make the decision. They end up taking whatever they were taught in their childhood, and then they hang on to it forever. They end up replicating the exact relationship their parents had or some significant people in their life had in some way, no matter what it was. If it was an absent father, an absent mother, verbal abuse, physical abuse, it doesn't matter. It's important to know that our subconscious is always seeking out familiar behavior, no matter how fucked up it is, simply because it's what we know. It's what we remember. And if it's familiar to us, it means it's safe enough. Even if it's not that safe at all, we will choose it. So once we recognize this is what's been going on in all of our relationships, we finally wake up to our choice in the matter. When we realize we don't have to stay in any situation or any relationship that we don't want to or that doesn't serve us, we realize we have so many other options available to us. We realize we're no longer victims of our past. So how do you make this change? You have to become the conscious person first before you go out and try to find conscious relationships. That's not how it works. You can't just be like, that's the same type of thing of trying to go out and have someone do it for you. You're pretty conscious, so you make me conscious. No, we have to do this for ourselves. We have to do this work ourselves. No one can do it for us. So you become conscious first, and you can also work together, even if you're already in a relationship, to bring your relationship to a more conscious place. You can be that person to start the process. You don't have to wait for them to do it. In fact, I do not recommend you ever do that. You'll be waiting a long time. You have to get this ball moving yourself. If you aren't the one to become conscious first, you won't be able to tell the difference between someone who's regulated or someone who isn't, or someone who is respectful and someone who isn't, or someone who is manipulating and someone who isn't. Because if you're not conscious, you're still going to be doubting yourself, questioning your decisions, uncertain about your future. Parts of you will still be unconscious and lost until you become the person you need. You'll know you'll have succeeded at becoming conscious if you find yourself in all of your relationship containers and you have no expectations for them. You don't expect them to be your everything. You don't expect them to give you anything. You don't need anything from them. All because you are finally self-sufficient and self-respecting. You'll know when that happens because of the way you will feel. You'll understand that the purpose of relationships were never, what can I get from you? How much will you give to me? How are you going to make my life better? That is not what relationships are about. That is not healthy. The entire purpose of a relationship is to just show up and enjoy someone's presence. Just enjoy being with them, loving them, appreciating them. Relationships aren't designed to come in and change someone. Let me change you. Let me fix you. Let me do this. No, that's garbage. And that is what so many people are doing. That is none of your business what other people do. If that makes you feel cheated or angry or like super confused, you're like, that doesn't make any sense, then that just means you have a little bit of work to do. And that's okay. It's totally normal to feel that way hearing this for the first time. But I don't recommend you stay in that place of endless expectation. I don't recommend you stay in that place of believing like, this isn't fair. They should do something for me. They should give me something. What's the purpose otherwise? They don't owe you anything. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow when we've been believing they do. They owe us something, whether it's your mom, your dad, your boss, your husband, your kids. They don't owe you anything. They are their own person. So this concept usually blows my clients' minds in the best kind of way, in a like 1,000 pounds being lifted off the chest kind of way. And sometimes it doesn't feel good. Sometimes there's resistance to this at first, and it makes sense. It's completely opposite from what we've always known. Hanging on to our expectations does not serve us though. And I'll just say, I've done the science. I've done all the experiments. There is no need to keep testing this theory and wondering if it works or not. It doesn't work. Expectations are never reasonable or justified, ever. I've tried, you guys. I have literally tried everything. They cause so much pain, so much suffering, and so much frustration, and there is no upside to them. They are just draining your energy, wasting your time. So we've got to drop our expectations and learn how to feel fully sufficient on our own. This is a cool thing to learn. It feels so good to do this. This means we can regulate and respond to our own emotions without lashing out at other people. We take complete responsibility for the results we are creating in our life. We know that we are responsible for them and we are not blaming our problems on other people. We have our own rewarding life separate from our relationships, all of them, separate from our friends, our parents, and definitely a romantic partner. We are our own person first and foremost. We have our own passions. We respect our own time. We keep ourselves busy. We aren't trying to be everything to anyone else because we're too busy enjoying our own separate life. If this sounds a little selfish or backwards, let me show you why it's not. People pleasing is the opposite of prioritizing and respecting yourself. When we aren't taking care of ourselves, we're attempting to take care of everyone and everything else around us. We start to censor ourselves in a way. We're constantly trying to protect the way other people think and feel, and then never giving any attention to what we are actually thinking and feeling. And this is a far more selfish behavior. Why? Because when you aren't showing up for yourself first, you are depriving yourself. And you're depriving everyone around you of your authenticity and your true fulfillment. You're lying about what you think and what you feel while also trying to squeeze into this idea of what you think other people want you to be. Doesn't that feel terrible? People pleasing is absolutely a form of manipulation, if you think about it. We think, oh, I'm a people pleaser. Look at this moral high ground I'm on. Look at my worthy cause of being everything to everyone else. But really, you're playing everyone. You're fooling them. Because people pleasing is lying about what's really going on. It's a cop-out. It's trying to avoid being brutally honest about what you really think and feel because you don't think the other person can handle it. It's assuming the worst about them while also bringing out the worst in yourself. And we think we're doing something, smart. When we people please, we're really only thinking about ourselves because we are feeling so scared. We're feeling scared we'll be left or judged or embarrassed, humiliated, ostracized. When we actually do have our own back and we are taken care of, we don't feel scared. We're no longer selfish. We can go to the person and tell the truth because we feel safe. We can be brutally honest. We can have hard conversations. And it doesn't stop our growth or our impact on the people around us. We're not hiding anymore. We're living exactly as who we are. I'm very passionate about people pleasing because I was your A+ people pleasing student. I could write a book on it. And I had to come around and realize I wasn't helping anyone by doing that. And I wasn't helping myself. No one wins if we're hating and disrespecting ourselves in our relationships. If we're prioritizing other people way above us. So they're up here and we're forgotten down here. It doesn't matter what kind of self-sacrificing behavior you're exhibiting, all the gifts, all the compliments, all the extravagant things you might be doing, back-breaking work for the person, whatever. Everyone involved ends up suffering. Even the kids. When we do this for our children, what they're learning is how to not take care of themselves, how to not regulate themselves. And that is, after all, where we all learned it, is when we were children. So you have to figure out what it means to respect yourself first. And then you'll stop tolerating disrespect from anyone else. Yeah, shout out to Erin. I know we're in this together. I love it. So this means we actually have to start changing how we show up in our day-to-day. That feels a little scary, but we have to change how we operate on the inside. I don't mean change your schedule and, do a bunch of things differently. I'm saying how you show up emotionally, energetically. And that's exactly what I help my clients do every single week. Then they are able to step out, feel empowered, and make the decisions they need to in order to start moving forward in their relationships instead of just repeating the same patterns over and over. I teach them and show them exactly how to take back this ownership over their lives and how to be self-sufficient on their own for the first time in their life. Because when we aren't respecting ourselves, we're allowing other people to walk all over us. And then we'll turn around and we'll be like, it's all your fault. Look how you're walking all over me. That's so rude. But who is the person putting you in that situation? You are. And once you're an adult, you are constantly making the choice to be in your relationships. You're not a kid anymore. You don't have to stay anywhere. So it really isn't their fault at all at this point. But it's not your fault either. It's not about fault finding. It's just that this is what unconscious relationships are. They're a succession of unconscious decisions that we don't even realize we've been making for our whole lives. So we have to learn the difference between tolerating disrespect unconsciously and then feeling like a victim after, and refusing to tolerate disrespect consciously and then feeling empowered by upholding that boundary. There is a huge difference there. Sounds like the same words I just said, but it's such a big distinction. Tolerating respect unconsciously and refusing to tolerate disrespect. Did I say tolerating respect? Anyway, I'm confused at myself. Okay, I hope you guys are following along. This is kind of advanced stuff, if I'm being honest. So if anything I've said isn't resonating or making sense, reach out to me afterward. I would love to have a conversation about all of it. So the second obstacle to creating conscious relationships is not knowing how to communicate, which is really an obstacle of not knowing how to feel. It's basically impossible to communicate with another human being if we don't first trust ourselves and the feelings we experience in our bodies. We can't communicate effectively until we have complete authority over our emotional lives, over all of our emotions. And I already shared the reason. It's because we haven't figured out how to feel safe in our bodies while simultaneously having an uncomfortable conversation. So you can't really do both. You don't know how to feel safe, and then you go try to have an uncomfortable conversation. What you're going to do is shut down communication. You're going to feel threatened. You're going to be like, shut it down, like Jess from New Girl. So we have to know and learn how to feel uncomfortable without it completely derailing our ability to communicate. Communication is uncomfortable almost always. Like, it just is. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not knowing how to feel uncomfortable means not knowing how to communicate with ourselves. So how can we expect to have effective communication with someone else if we've never figured out how to do it on our own? When we feel scared in our bodies, we go into fight or flight. So in relationships, going into fight looks like childish arguing, reacting to big emotions like an actual toddler would, like crying dramatically, slamming a door, yelling, throwing a tantrum, screaming insults, or saying I hate you. Or really, this can be all like texting now. We do this emotional lashing out on texting. We'll say mean things, we'll bully people, we'll be so childish and in fight mode. And flight, on the other hand, looks more like dipping out, like running away when conflict comes up, giving the silent treatment instead of approaching the problem head on, attempting to change them by subtle, like guilt and shame, like making someone feel ashamed by what they've done. Like, you really hurt me. That was really disappointing. That is also a form of manipulation and a attempt to change someone by making them feel really negative emotion and then like threatening them with it. And it's also like ending a relationship right when things get a little hairy. Like, oh, this just got serious. All right, it's been cool. I'm out of here. So none of this behavior is conscious or helpful to communication. So in order to get to a place where both parties can communicate really well, at least one person involved must become conscious, which means one person must decide they're not going to keep fighting or fighting. It's okay if the other person keeps responding. They can just show up as many times as it takes, not doing that, for the other person to be like, I see you're not doing this anymore. What's going on there? And they'll get a little curious eventually. They aren't going to keep bailing and avoiding, and they're not going to keep tolerating disrespect. So really showing up in a new way changes the dynamics of a relationship, even if the other person isn't becoming conscious with you at that time. So instead, you will start respecting yourself. You will start upholding boundaries for yourself. Boundaries aren't about what the other person does. They're about what you do, what you choose to do. You will learn how to trust yourself. You will learn how to feel safe in your body, feel uncomfortable emotions, all while having your own back throughout. Okay? And if you want to learn how to do all of that, then that's what my coaching program is for. That's exactly what I take my one-on-one clients through step by step. And it takes time. You can't learn how to do all of this in one sitting and in one class, because you're building a new skill, a new way for your brain to operate. So getting good at a new skill takes guidance, it takes time, it takes failure, multiple failures, and then getting right back on track. But the thing is, it doesn't have to take forever. Like, this can happen fast once you commit and start doing it. And last week alone, I had 2 separate clients tell me that after like that one call, it was like one lesson on relationships, that they felt better than they had after like months of therapy sessions, of couples counseling, of all these self-help books that they've been reading. And it's not that those things aren't valuable and amazing, because they are, but it's that they were finally hearing it and understanding it the way I was delivering it as their coach. Really, a coach-client relationship is the first conscious relationship some people have. It is a relationship. And since I have all the conscious things, now I'm able to help them get there so much faster. They come up and meet me because we are so capable of this. We are smart people. We're not stupid. We can figure this out. We just need that little push and that bit of guidance to get there. And I will say, the reason I know this stuff, the reason I'm so good at conscious relationships now, is because I have made every mistake in the book. I have had to figure out how, like, why isn't this working? Why is it that when I manipulate, they don't do what I want? Why does this relationship feel so draining and awful and tiring? I put my, like, what's the saying? Like, your nose to the, your pedal to the metal. I can't think of a saying there, but I got to work, and now I'm like a Houdini. So all of their kind words, all of their like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It just means that my program is working exactly the way it's supposed to, because what I'm doing is teaching them how to feel empowered, how to feel better, how to have better relationships faster. So it doesn't take them 10 years like it took me. So if you want to learn how to have real communication, real growth, If you really desire more conscious relationships in your life, then you need to know how to help yourself feel better without expecting the other person to come in and save you. Thank you, Lizzie. Nose to the grindstone. Thank you so much. You're an angel. Okay. So, and I do want to say, like, you can't even expect your coach to do this work for you. It's not their job. They aren't there to be a crutch. They show you how to stand up for yourself, and you have to do the work for you. And that in and of itself is empowering. So I just want to note that communication is literally everything we do every day, everything we do in ourselves, the way we talk to ourselves in our minds, the way we make our decisions, the way we either grow or stay stuck, the way we are choosing to think in every second. All of that is communication. It's so important to be well read and to have like a set of ground rules for like, this is how I manage communication with myself, and this is how I manage communication with others, and then following through on those things. When we aren't treating ourselves with respect we deserve, it becomes impossible to give respect, to give love, or to receive it. So we're really cutting ourselves off from the world emotionally when we're not giving what we need to ourselves. When we treat ourselves poorly, we treat other people poorly. And that's why I always say the way other people treat you is all about them, and it has nothing to do with you. It's all about them. And that's when we got to turn around and look at ourselves. How are you treating you? And again, this is why it's not selfish to take care of yourself. You can't hate yourself while also trying to love someone else. It won't work. It will fail. You can't punish yourself while also trying to give praise to other people. It's gonna fall short. You can't abandon yourself while trying to help other people out. Your help will not work. So as within, so without. And that basically means whatever is going on inside of you is what you are really giving to others. It doesn't matter if your intentions are amazing and pure and angelic and so filled with love. If you are feeling shitty on the inside, if you're feeling self-loathing, awful on the inside, no person on the outside is going to be feeling love from you because you have not done the work to create any love. They will only feel your self-loathing, your awfulness, no matter what you do or say. And here's why. We have these intelligent minds that are always thinking, that are always in logic. They're always like being very pragmatic. And then we have our bodies, which are also super smart on their own, separate from our logic. So this means there's constantly communication happening that is unseen, emotional communication. And sometimes I think our brain really likes to believe we can pull a fast one on our body. Like our logic can pull a fast one on our emotions. And we can dupe or trick other people into believing we're good when we really aren't. Like, I don't know about you. I have a life set up where I'm surrounded by people now that are like super honest. They're not going to like lie to me, but have you been in that place where you go out and you see someone, you're like, hey, how are you? And they're like, I'm good. I'm fine. Yeah, everything's great. And it's like, they're saying the words and you're just like not buying it. You're just like, okay. And then you're like, why do we do that? Why do we lie? We can't trick that energy. It's there. It always tells the truth. And self-respect begins the second we stop lying to ourselves and other people about how we're really feeling. Like, I love it when people are like, hey, I'm doing really bad. I'm having a really hard day. What's going on with you? And then, that's when you can like, that honesty opens up the door for like, hey, do you want to talk about it? Can I get you some help? Like, honesty brings out the best of humanity, and yet we continue to lie and pretend and lie and pretend. So anyway, I'm feeling the coach power today. I hope you guys are feeling it too. But I'm going to try to wrap up because it's already 2:40. So the final obstacle to creating conscious relationships is not knowing how to navigate conflict in a productive way. So avoiding healthy conflict is like contracting a virus, like a deadly silent plague. It is certain death for a relationship. You think if you avoid the conflict, things will just blow over. You'll forget eventually. It'll just go away. And then the plague starts to rot the relationship from the inside out. Avoiding conflict is like a dying star collapsing in on itself. And it makes for a great show, but it's very destructive on a catastrophic level. So if you are actively avoiding conflict in any of your relationship with your family, your friends, partners, or coworkers, this is a sure way to tell that you are participating in unconscious relationships. Handling conflict frequently is actually a sign of relational health. Conflict, disagreements, these are both required for growth and connection. These are a good thing. Without them, it's all surface and no depth. It's all like a trick of appearance with no quality substance. So if none of your relationships ever have conflict or disagreement or an uncomfortable discourse conversation, then that's a red flag. Because in conscious relationships, both of the people participate in healthy conflict. Both people bring their disagreements right away. They don't waste any time. They regulate their emotions constantly. They're able to speak calmly and respectfully throughout the entire conversation. So at the end, it's actually resolved. And then the relationship immediately returns to its homeostatic state, to its happy, safe, fulfilling default state. It's not like you leave with a grudge. You're not leaving blaming. You're not leaving frustrated, because both people recognize what is their responsibility and what isn't. And so in that conflict, you're able to navigate it without blurring those lines and wasting time and energy trying to figure out who's responsible for what. So this is another really important thing I teach my clients. I teach them how to take responsibility. I teach them what is theirs, and more importantly, what is not theirs, so they can stay relaxed and certain and confident throughout the disagreement, throughout the uncomfortable conversation. And so then they start to actually look forward to conflict. They're like, ooh, I can't wait for the next one. Put me in again. I want to try again. I want more practice. And that's the whole purpose. So when these lines are clearly marked on both sides, so both people, conflict doesn't get messy. That's why you only need really one person to know how to do this to start creating a conscious relationship. Because if one person is holding both markers in place for the people, then it's going to go well. It won't get frustrating. It won't become destructive. It'll remain productive when you have the awareness of who is responsible for what. And so the ending result is always, it brings you closer. It makes the bond stronger. It makes the trust deeper. It makes the respect greater. That's the good stuff. Conflict leads to the good stuff. Conflict should always be expected and welcomed with open arms. I know I do. Steven sometimes doesn't like it still, but I'm like, it's okay. I'm the one person. I'm holding up the flags. I don't know. So conflict only goes wrong when the people feel threatened, when they feel unsafe, scared, when they don't know how to have their own back. They're not empowered. It turns into a war instead of a healthy discourse, strengthening the relationship. People literally start using war tactics, you guys, on their loved ones without even realizing they're doing it. They start attacking them like plotting out defense, trying to control them out of fear of what they'll do, lying to them, spying on them, invading their personal property, bombarding them with texts or calls or angry letters. We start to expect the worst. We start treating our loved ones like an enemy when we don't know how to handle conflict. And this is so sad, you guys. Our loved ones aren't our enemies. We want to love people. That's what we're literally designed to do, is love, help, encourage other people. But we're so far removed from that truth because of the fucked up world we live in. So all of this behavior is unconscious. Don't be hard on yourself. Like, how many of you have found yourself creating an enemy out of a loved one? Like, I freaking have. We've all done it. We're all guilty. And it's not personal. Nobody does relationships perfectly, ever. We always are going to make mistakes, even after you've done all this work, even after you're like a super conscious person. I had to apologize yesterday to Stephen for like snapping at him. And then I had to be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That was not about you at all. I'm going to take complete ownership. I'm so sorry. And then it doesn't build up. You just bam, handle it, but we're still going to make mistakes. So it's time to decide if this is the way you want to keep living. Do you want to keep having a war with your loved ones? Are these types of relationships serving you? Are you enjoying them? Are they adding to your life? Or do you want something that feels more regulated and empowering and conscious? And it's okay if you learn this stuff and you're like, I'm good, I don't need to change. As long as you feel empowered, knowing that it is your choice always. You are not a victim to any of your relationship patterns. You are the creator of them once you're an adult. So I'll leave you with a couple questions, and I want you to ask yourself these on your own time. There will be a recorded replay. If you don't want to write them all down really fast, just go to the replay and you can get them later. So how have you been communicating with yourself lately? What would you like to change about that, if anything? And are there any relationships in your life that are unconscious right now? How can you take full responsibility for that reality without blaming it on the other person involved? And how do you want your relationships to feel from here on out? What do you want them to be? You got to really know that. So I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions at all. This is a huge topic and it's my favorite. And also, it is still February. At the beginning of this month, I did a journal challenge. And if you missed that, at the end, I was offering free coaching sessions until the end of this month. And so I still have some spots available. You can book a session if you'd like. You can talk about relationships. You can literally come get coached and benefit from that hour alone and never have to come back again. Just take me up on this offer. It's going to be incredible. I have one tomorrow. I've had a couple so far, and I've been loving talking to you guys. So, yeah, I love talking about relationships, and this work, when we start it on ourselves, helps us create really amazing relationships. So I went from having the most unconscious, uncomfortable, dysfunctional relationships possible to pulling a 180 and creating such fulfilling, rewarding relationships I could have ever imagined. They're better than I imagined. So it's possible. It's never too late. And you deserve this feeling. You deserve to stop having your energy drained with frivolous things. You deserve to feel empowered. You deserve to attract and tolerate only the best treatment because you are incredible. So anyway, that's about it. That was fun. Yeah. Thank you for joining live. I appreciate you guys. I hope you have an amazing day. And I'm going to go get married next week. So peace out. My next webinar, I'll be a wife. That'll be fun. Getting the government involved. All right, guys. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll see you next time. Peace out.